What up, y'all? It's Coffee on the vid. And check it out, man. Everyone knows thus far at this point that Diddy pretty much beat the case, man. He is convicted on one count, but it's a minor count compared to what the for real deal charges that we're going to put him away for basically forever and a day. Let's dive a little deeper into the specifics of it all and what's really going on.
The judge has thanked the jurors, and they have left the courtroom. And in fact, the judge has now adjourned until 1 o'clock this afternoon. At that point, this courtroom erupted in cheers. We're hearing that Sean Combs, he got on his knees with his head in his hands in his chair, and he was praying. The family was clapping and cheering, big hugs all around, big loud shouts of joy, attorneys hugging one another while the prosecutors simply walked past them. And the defense team now has gone into the gallery where the family was seated and hugging the family. The courtroom is now slowly starting to clear. But what we had heard from the judge before the verdict was read, he had admonished everyone to please stay calm, that he did not want any outbursts during the reading of the verdict. But that verdict has been read. The jurors are out of the courtroom. The court has been adjourned until 1 o'clock this afternoon. And that was the signal for this family to rejoice over what they believe is the best part of what this verdict is, that he's been found not guilty of the top charges against him. And as his attorney says, it means he will not be spending the rest of his life in prison. However, we should remember that the prosecution is saying that they're going to be going for the maximum penalty that he could face. And in the courtroom, they were telling the judge that that could be a maximum of 20 years. That would be substantial. But it probably should be remembered that they're going to say that he has never faced charges like this before. And so that might be something that would be considered when the judge does sentence Combs.
How you doing? Not bad. How are you?
Anything you want the public to know?
Yeah, we'll be saying something soon. Thanks. We're hopeful that ultimately he receives a substantial sentence for what he's done, and we're pleased that Cassie has brought to light everything that has happened in this trial. I just spoke with her and with the U.S. Attorney's Office team, and she's in a good place. She's pleased that the jury has found him guilty of 2 federal crimes. We're pleased that he's finally been held responsible for 2 federal crimes, something that he's never faced in his life. He still faces substantial jail time. Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard.
So you hear the scene there, man. Diddy dropping to his knees, actually addressing the court, turning around, telling everyone, I will be home very soon. And will he? He very well may indeed be on his way home pretty soon. Possibly. Because how long has Diddy been locked up for? Like a year, I believe. And it's kind of interesting. In a sense, I was using the Camron Reed trial. You know what I mean? If you tap into the true crime stuff, y'all already know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it was a trial that took over the news headlines, and the verdict just came back like a week or 2 ago, and it's still dominating the headlines in reality, even in the aftermath of the verdict. And basically, this was a woman that was tried for murder of her ex-boyfriend, who was law enforcement, and they took her to trial once, hung jury, took her to trial again. It's a real suspect case. There seems to be a lot more at play. A lot of people think this woman flat out did it. I'm getting a bit off track because I'm just using this as a reference point and as an example on this one. But what the similarities are is she was found guilty of 1 count, just like how Diddy was here. And it also was not for the whole shebang, the whole, hey, you're going away forever in a day. She got found of like a DUI offense, which she got time served on. Now, in the Diddy case, there has been talks about how he could be hit with time served. Will he be? I don't know. Okay, because basically what they convicted of him of was traveling around to engage in prostitution, paying for acts, which there was never no debate, dispute about none of that. You know what I mean? It was it ex trafficking? Was he violating these women, coercing them, beating them, all that, by means of controlling them and manipulating them into these acts and all that? And, you know, with Cassie, I felt very well there was enough evidence that could have quite possibly been the conclusion that the jury came to. But in my opinion, and let me know everyone out there if you think this as well, if you concur and agree with me, the second witness, the Jane Doe, who all the internet sleuths came and said, yo, that's Daphne Joy, 50 cents PM. You know what I mean? We saw Killer Cam interviewing the Punisher, like, yo. And comment your thoughts about that interview. That was absolutely fucking crazy, man. Seeing this guy talking about Diddy coming out with the Muslim veil on, and then he switched it up to the Yankee fitted and all this extra-ish weird stuff. Watching Cassie get piped down by the Punisher all the time was fucking crazy. But Killer Cam, and pause, we gotta throw a pause, even though in there though, even though it's a male smashing a female, we got Diddy doing his voyeuristic endeavors. Pause. So that's where the pause comes from, right? But Killer Cam was like, yo, did you ever smash 50 cents PM? And he was like, nah, just Cassie. And that's, again, do you agree with this, that Daphne Joy, the Jane Doe, was the witness that really hurt the case, right? Because with Cassie, like I said, him extorting the mom, him running up in Kid Cudi's ish with the Molotov cocktail, the Grinch that stole Christmas activities, and whatever he did to that man's dog, right? Because Kid Cudi flat out said, yo, the dog was never the same, man. This man did something to my dog, this fucking demon. You know, it's like, damn, he could very well get convicted of all this. But then we get Jane Doe, Daphne Joy, on a stand, and she's flat out saying, hey, yo, I got active with him freak off wise under my own volition because I wanted to get more of his time. I was jealous of Young Miami and stuff like that, and there really wasn't the allegations and stories of him getting all violent with her and all that, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, that didn't push forward and confirm and corroborate the pattern that the people, the prosecutors, were trying to push initially, and what the Cassie testimony and evidence stated. With Daphne Joy, it was like a totally different situation, and with that being what it was, and then Diddy having a legal dream team, they ate the rest of it all up. And don't get me wrong, the prosecutors were no slouches in this case neither. All the legal analysts were like, yo, there are heavyweights on both sides, on the prosecution and on the defense, but it just wasn't enough. And I think that the Daphne Joy witness was what fluffed up the case for them. You know, what say you? Leave it all in the comments below. So there you have it. He's convicted of the lesser charge. Now the maximum for that one is 10 years. But when it comes to the feds, they have the sentencing guidelines, which, you know, have a lot to do. The charges, what they hold, you know, max, minimum, etc. Then the individual convicted of the crime and what their criminal history is like and such. And obviously we know Diddy has been charged with some ish before, but his record ain't that dirty, you know what I mean? So the legal analysts are saying they believe he's gonna fall into the 5.25 years for sentencing, which, what does he have in, like almost a year? He'd have 3 years to go basically before he's coming home to the halfway house. But we'll have to wait and see. That's not anything for sure or for certain. The sentencing date has not been announced yet, so I don't know, will they go with where the guideline falls and all that? Tap in, let me know. Now it's interesting as well, just something to kind of throw that out there as like a wild card conversation is, you ever heard of those letters that people that cooperated with the feds in any way before can have, put into their file? Like if you ever watched The Sopranos, when Tony helped the feds, like the Fed came at him and said, listen, remember back in the day, the old school mafia days, you guys helped the president watch the ports on a national security level. And you know what I mean? This is back like post 9/11. So if there's any ish going on in that type way, let us know. You'll be doing your duty of country. Al-Qaeda, 9/11, those were all types of things being discussed. And Tony actually gave him some info about some individuals who the feds then turned around and said, hey, these were anti-terror agents, from that department of the feds. Were like, those were some people funding some, extremists back home. And that goes into Tony's file. Now, there's stuff like that, and maybe Diddy ever did anything like that in the past that could help him. Who knows? That won't necessarily be put out there, but I don't know. Just kind of food for thought in that sense. But at the same time, we know the feds have wanted to take Diddy down, you know what I mean? So there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and that will all be answered at that sentencing day, which again has not been announced yet. So subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for those updates. Hit the comments, let's talk about it all. But one last thing before we close this out, as you heard Diddy's defense saying they're going to be issuing a statement. I'm sure that's going to come sooner rather than later. That could be today, that could be tomorrow. But something that I think will be determined today, but I'm not 100% factual on it. If not, I would expect it to be addressed tomorrow, is the court will say, hey, we will grant him a bail or we won't grant him a bail. You know what I mean? Because Diddy was never given a bail because they feared witness tampering. That, if you recall, his attorneys tried over and over again to see if they could get him a bail. The feds were not budging. Now that the case is over with, he is indeed convicted. I doubt that they think that he's going to run, because he's looking at short time. He could be released on the bail. Now that will be something to pay attention to as well, because if they grant him the bail, could that be them saying, hey, he's going to end up getting probation or time served, so we're going to just let him out? Where if they believe he's going to get time, they might as well say, hey, you're going to get locked away. What's the point of letting you get the bail? You know what I mean? Because the bail typically is for while the case is pending, when it comes to the legal system. And in this case, in this situation, sentencing is pending, but the case isn't pending anymore. You know what I mean? It's not where he's innocent, awaiting trial, awaiting a pending case. No, the case is pretty much wrapped up and he's convicted. So to me, the determination that the court makes about the bail could speak a lot in regards to what we see sentencing wise. Now, there is a chance that they could hit him with the 5 1/4 and they just allow him to come home on bail to get his affairs in order. That could be a thing as well. But I don't know. I don't necessarily see them doing him any favors like that, in my opinion. But it's a lot to discuss, you know what I mean? There's a lot of little different scenarios and takeaways and things when it comes to all that. So tap in, subscribe. Look forward to talking to you up in the comments. It's Coffee signing out, and I'm going to get back with you guys on the next one. Peace.